The following is a presentation of the Black Hollywood Live Network, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is Black Hollywood Live, Breaking Into, featuring in-depth interviews with today's most influential entertainment figures, highlighting their tips, tricks, and techniques on breaking into the entertainment industry.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host of Black Hollywood Live, Breaking Into.
Hey everyone, you're watching Breaking Into. I am Dario Kristen. Here joining me today is a very special guest. He is one of the most sought after radio personalities and TV hosts. We have Mike Catherwood with us today. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Especially in the middle of, I know your wife's expecting, so we feel honored that you actually came in here today to have the
she's super expecting.
like today.
Yeah, it could be any moment. So
wow. Well, we are honored to have you here on that special occasion.
No, I'm happy to get out of the house, believe me. Like, I want to be there when the time comes, but she's not exactly in the best emotional state, so anything that gives me an excuse to get out of the house is a good thing.
Well, you have such a long history in radio and television. I mean, I know currently you're on KRock FM, which I listen to you all the time.
Thanks, man.
As well as Love Line with Dr. Drew.
Huh?
I mean, an unbelievable career. And you're an LA native, correct?
Yeah, born and raised. Yeah. Not about like 3 freeway exits from where we sit right now. It's kind of crazy. And when you recount stuff like that, you talk about being on Love Line and working for KRock, it still seems surreal. It's been over a decade of me doing it. Gosh, it's 2014. Yeah, it's almost 13 years of being in radio at a station like KRock, which is recognized as one of the more important and influential stations. It still seems surreal to me, even after all this time, because I used to grow up, listening to the Love Line with Corolla and Dr. Drew. I hide under the covers so my parents wouldn't know I was listening, and then I started prank calling them when I was in high school. And yeah, so now it's like it is very strange, but it does add to kind of that level of gratitude you have for the job that you have.
It was almost like foreshadowing when you were a kid,
Yeah, I mean, it was foreshadowing in the sense that I was being a part of something as a consumer that I would end up being a purveyor of, but it wasn't at all like foreshadowing in that I never in a million years guessed that I could have access into like that world. It just kind of happened that way. But that I think adds to why it seems kind of almost illusory. It doesn't really seem like a reality even now when I do it, because it was so far-fetched, the idea of like me getting into radio and then being on KRock alone, let alone hosting Love Line and talking to people like around the country about their sex problems and stuff.
So you weren't one of those kids. So I know a lot of people who grew up in LA. They grew up around the entertainment business their entire life. You didn't have those aspirations growing up to say, hey, you know what? When I get older, I am definitely going to get into the entertainment business or some aspect of it.
Yeah, I wanted to be a performer, but I never assumed I would get it. I was in a band. I always wanted to be a musician, and that was going to be my entree into being a performer. And but I was in a death metal band. I was in a really well-respected punk rock band too when I was a teenager. But never, even if these projects were to take off beyond my wildest dreams, they were in genres of music where your biggest level of success would be like you were popular in the underground.
Yeah.
You might have some mainstream magazine access, but I never dreamed of being like actually successful, paying the bills in the entertainment industry. I had aspirations, but I never had any real kind of dreams or goals to set for myself, because I didn't think it was real. You might as well say, did you ever dream of playing for the Lakers? And I'd say, yeah. I mean, I'd love to. I've been a Laker fan my whole life, but I'm 5'10" and terrible at basketball. It just doesn't compute.
It doesn't compute. Yeah. And then you went to Rutgers University, correct?
Yeah, I tried. Yeah.
And then I read that you were a theater major. Or start off as a theater major. What made you choose theater versus like communications or business? Like why theater?
I thought, I always thought like, at the time I was consumed with the idea of just being creative. I was 19. I had already, wasted close to 2 years after high school of not doing kind of the standard route of like maybe seeking further education, all that kind of stuff. I wanted, like I said, I wanted to be a punk rocker, and I was this kid from the suburbs who I idealized the idea of being, this kind of drug addicted outlaw artist And those were all the people I always looked up to, be it writers or musicians or artists down the line. And I was trying to like live that dream and manifest that idea. And I found myself being so much more consumed by the lifestyle than actually producing anything creative. And so when I moved east, I thought I'd study theater because it would give me a chance to actually roll up my sleeves and do something creative. Yeah. Even though, you whether it be if you study writing or you study architecture, anything that may be based in something that's creative, I looked at it as, unless I major in music or theater, those are going to be my only chances to actually put rubber to the road and do things that are creative. Yeah. And while I'm trying to learn, but I didn't end up doing anything with my education. I went out there and just ended up going to New York City and doing lots of drugs and partying. And and it was only it was less than a full year of school before I was back in LA trying to clean my life up.
And then you're also a certified personal trainer, or not personal trainer, but trainer, just muscle trainer.
I was. I don't know if I still am. Like I mean, I was at one point certified. I don't know if you have to like update those like driver's license. So. But
then with that, you also seem to put yourself kind of like in a change, and you got into radio. How did that transition happen from going, as you were saying, you went to had your moment of kind of partying, but then you transitioned into the life that you are in now with radio? How did that happen?
When I moved back to LA after moving to the East Coast to go to Rutgers, I moved back and I immediately checked in to a rehab facility. I mean, my drug use and drinking had gotten so far out of control that I had no other choice. And this was not my first go at trying to get sober. When I got out, I was really invested in the idea of taking recovery seriously this time. I wasn't just kind of I'll let my body clean out a little bit, and then I'll talk to my old friends again. This was I had made the decision that I have no other choice. Either I'm going to clean up now, or I stand no chance of living like a viable lifestyle. So when I got clean, I was back here in LA. I had nothing to my name. I had no skill set. I had no real understanding of any craft, nor did I have any money. So I went out to get like a straight job, just a job to pay the bills, and then I was going to try to figure out what I was going to do from there. I got a job at KRock at an entry-level job. Like, essentially I was a glorified janitor. I cleaned up the place. I picked up boxes and packages for the station. I drove the DJs around, where they needed to go. I'd go to concerts and events for KRock and like hand out promotional stuff. I mean, it was an entry level gig. And I started kind of prank calling the morning show. That kind of led me to get the confidence to start submitting comedy bits to the morning show. I had a lot of parody songs, voice bits, man on the street type stuff. I'd interview people. And this all kind of it built over a slow period. I mean, maybe 6 months, where everything that was accepted through the barrage of stuff I would send them, every little bit kind of built up my ability to want to do more. And it finally got to the point after about 8 months of working at the station at that entry-level job that the morning show hired me, and wow. at another very entry-level job. But I had now made that transition into being a part of the on-air team, and the Kevin and Bean show, a legendary, really just like an incredibly well-respected morning show with guys who were so I can't express how grateful I am to have worked with Kevin and Bean, because there's a lot of great radio personalities out there, especially morning talent. That's kind of the prime time, the drive to work section of the day. That's prime time for radio. And a lot of the guys in morning radio are very territorial, and they're very protective of what they have. Kevin and Bean have shown year after year, with myself, with Ralph Garman, with Adam Carolla, with Jimmy Kimmel, with Carson Daly, all these people that seem to come through their show go on to do other things in show business, because they're incredibly embracing and open and supportive of you getting on the air. If you have something creative or something funny to say, they want you on the air. They want you to help you out. And so and that was that. And once I started working for Kevin and Bean, I did some production stuff. I did medial jobs for them, but they would constantly let me at least pitch ideas. And the more and more I pitched, the more and more my ideas got on the air. And then that was how my career in radio got started.
And would you suggest to someone who's starting off, who wants to follow kind of the similar path as you, that if they want to go into radio, that they should maybe do they have to start at the bottom, or should they start off as a producer? And I know a lot of times there's lots of producers that are on shows, which you became a producer, but it's hard to transition into being an on-air personality.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of make that significant change if that's what you want to do?
You have to. There has to be some bravery there.
Yeah.
That honestly is that's the bridge to doing it. And there's plenty of guys that are not only not producers. There's plenty of guys that listen to the radio. They're driving to work every day, and they're like, I could do that. And the only thing that separates them from not doing that is having the bravery and the persistence to follow through with trying to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't have had the courage to just do it from my couch or from my car driving to work, listening to Kevin and Bean or listening to Howard Stern. These guys that I was infatuated with. But once I got my foot in the door, even at an entry level job, then they became something real. They became something attainable. Kevin and Bean weren't just these these great mythical kind of voices that I hear on my radio. They were guys I'd hang out with at Coachella, or I was like, oh, there's Kevin and Bean, like they're people I shake hands with. And so that little bit of understanding, like they're just guys like you and me. They put, and even though I still was very intimidated by them and Ralph and everybody on the morning crew, it gave me that little spark to say, like, what's the worst that can happen if I go do a parody song and send it to them? Behind closed doors, they'll make fun of me, but it's not like they're going to go on the air and be like, right. This person you've never heard of submitted a song to us and it's terrible. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So, the thing I have to say, one of the biggest beauties of radio, one of the aspects of it that makes it so pure, even in a world today where I'll be the first to admit radio does seem to be kind of a dying art, is that you really do have the chance to have a career in radio just by being around it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get on a TV set as a PA or like a craft services guy and then all of a in front of the camera. True. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, their chances are pretty slim.
Right. I mean, look. There's probably like crazy instances where somebody's just so funny that they happen to, be pulled on as like a on-air correspondent. But in reality, it's just not. If you want to get into television, you don't start your career as a gaffer or a cameraman.
Right. Right.
But in radio, if you just are in the station somehow and you really have a real passion for getting on the air, it's a reality. And I could say, if you want to get into radio, don't study the stuff in the periphery. Just go get a job at a radio station and get some experience. Learn how to cut tapes, learn how to edit, learn how to change carts, do all the stuff that you don't want to do, all the unfun stuff. Learn how to do it, make yourself valuable to a radio station, and that's better than any kind of certification or education you can get outside of doing that.
And we see right now with like YouTube, there's so many YouTube sensations and stars who they pull off of YouTube, and a lot of over-the-top personalities. Do you feel like you need to have an over-the-top personality or a kind of alter ego to get into radio? I know you have your Psycho Mike, and that's like kind of like your over-the-top personality. Do you need that to enter radio?
No, because I honestly don't feel like I have a different personality. I have a name. I have a name that was given to me by Kevin and Bean that I hated. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, people in radio that give you a name that's, because Mike Catherwood doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, especially when no one knows who you are. Right. So, but Psycho Mike does, and it sticks with you.
It sticks with you. Yeah.
And I'm constantly explaining to people how I feel like I'm not that mentally off when they meet me, because they say, you don't seem very psycho.
Yeah, you seem pretty calm.
Thank you. I think so. I'm like, I feel like another beautiful aspect of radio, being that it's unscripted, is that the more real you are, the more close you are to your actual personality, the better chance you have of being successful in the industry. Yeah. People seemingly latch on to the personalities that are as relatable as possible, and people relate to people that are authentic.
Yeah.
And some people are naturally over the top. So if you're that guy, if you're like Big Boy here, legendary morning show host Big Boy really is like a jubilant like large boisterous
Yeah,
guy.
he is.
And his personality it's not a put on, so it's very easy for him to transition to doing that on the air. Howard Stern really is this incredibly acerbic wit that has these strange insecurities, and he lets those shine through, and that's what people like about all these people that are legends in the industry. To me, have always been people that have allowed their real, authentic vulnerability shine through.
That's true.
So I think that's another real great aspect of it. You don't have to try to invent something. It's not like stand-up. There's a lot of similarities between stand-up and radio being great at either. Yeah. But one tremendous aspect about stand-ups is that they can get that kind of that retrite of escaping into a character.
Yeah.
If you invent a great character, you can do that.
And you kind of, I guess, at that with stand-up, at that moment if it's going to work and if it doesn't work.
Right.
And then with networking, and you mentioned kind of just like being at the station, how important is having a mentor to survive in this business?
I think it's invaluable, and I don't want to discourage people if they don't have someone that's helping them along or mentoring them. It's not like you can't make it. I'm certainly not like an expert in that regard, but I know for a fact that if it wasn't for guys like Ralph Garman, it wasn't for Kevin and Bean for sure, Adam Carolla, being so nice to always, because you F up, you make mistakes in any industry. It's just you're so much more visible when you make mistakes in front of a microphone or a camera. And if I didn't have guys like that to constantly tell me like, oh, dude, everyone has flat jokes. Everyone has bits that don't work. Don't worry about it. Everyone craps themselves on the air. And, hearing it from guys like that who were so funny, and constantly being there to wipe my tears away, proverbially. That was, I can't even really put a value on it. It was so meaningful to me.
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes that people make who are trying to enter into the business?
I think they put too much effort into the wrong areas. This is in no way to belittle or to insult, kind of YouTube stars or reality TV stars, because a lot of them are incredibly clever and thoughtful people. But so many of them create these, like you said, over-the-top characteristics to catch people's attention. But that's fleeting. I mean, I really put in effort into doing all the right things. I mean, it sounds boring and it sounds strange, but you can, if you're, look at it like if you wanted to be a rock star, you could spend 10,000 hours practicing the guitar, or you could spend 10,000 hours practicing the right makeup and costume look and pyrotechnics and stuff. And maybe you can get one great concert out of the pyrotechnics and the makeup, but if you really learn how to master your craft, that's going to take you a lot farther.
Yeah. And then now you have also transitioned from radio to also TV hosting, and that is a whole different monster in its own area. Was that a natural transition for you to go into that realm? Is that something that you wanted in your career, or did it just kind of happen?
Yes. I mean, in many ways, television was incredibly natural when I would do things like talk shows. I'll never forget the first time I got to fill in for Regis when it was still the Regis and Kelly show. Yeah. I was so shocked at how natural it felt, because that really is like it was, now it's Live with Regis and Kelly and Michael. But when they used to bill it as Live with Regis and Kelly, and I always thought, well, yeah, it's live, you're sure. No, it really is. And Gelman came back and he threw me a couple papers and he talked to me about what was going to go on. He's like, all right, we'll see you out there. Good luck. And then you just talk. Yeah. And because it was so similar to radio, I felt there was almost no struggle to transition into doing that. Now, having been fortunate enough to do some other jobs in radio where you're like reading from a teleprompter and trying to present, that wasn't so natural. And I still don't feel like I'm the best at it, or even, I'm competent. That is not an easy transition. And I still have problems. I won't watch myself when I do things, like entertainment hosting or scripted stuff. I can't watch myself because I know I'm reading someone else's words. Yeah. And I'm not in any way trying to denigrate those words. It's just, it feels so forced for me. Some people are so skilled at it. You see a great guy like Mario Lopez or Maria Menounos or Ryan Seacrest, and it's an art unto itself. And people think that I'm kidding, and they think like, how hard could it be to read? And it's like, no. To make it seem natural, to make it seem is very difficult, and they make it look so easy because they're super good at it.
Yeah, it's a skill.
And I certainly haven't found that transitioning into that skill set. But talk show stuff, man, it really has been so amazing how similar it is, and actually sometimes a bit easier than radio.
And what tips would you give someone who isn't currently in radio who would like to kind of follow your path and go into live hosting, live television hosting as well?
I honestly get good at making conversation. There's no supplementing, there's no replacement of just getting good at what you want to do. If you want to be a talk show host, learn, watch TiVo, all the late night guys, TiVo, the people that are the best at it. Go watch YouTube videos of old Oprah. When she still had the Oprah. Because look, watch Letterman, watch Oprah, watch Howard Stern. People who are, if you want to interview, watch the people who are best at it. If you want to be a TV presenter, watch Maria Menounos, and then practice and just get good at being. If you're at dinner and you don't want to make small talk, then don't make small talk. Ask a very interesting question. Bring up something about politics and I know that sounds so cheesy. It sounds so kind of like Hallmark Channel, the idea of like, well, just practice what you do. Right. But no, get to the point where you're composed and it's easy for you to do what you want to do. I mean, I can't express how much that makes a big difference. There's the fundamental skills that come along with doing what you want to do. Get good at them, practice them. And outside of that, the only other thing I can do is don't marry yourself to your career path. If you,
great advice.
In 2005, I wanted to be a KRock on-air DJ spinning records and, talking for 15 seconds over the intro of a Pennywise song. I could not just against all odds connect myself to that idea, because it turns out I'm a much better talk show host than I would ever be a DJ.
And do you prefer one over the other, or you enjoy them both?
I do now. I prefer, what we're doing right now is what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's what I have a passion for. It's what I love to do. And that's what it makes it so much easier to do that kind of fundamental BS that we were talking about, like practicing your skill. It makes it so much easier when the skill you're practicing is something you love. And I love talking to people. I love it. I love it with. There's nothing else in the world like it. Like really having an interesting conversation. And finding out about people's lives and things like that. It is the best thing in the world for me. So you got to really ask yourself a question and be harshly honest with yourself, because believe me, everyone else is going to be harshly honest with you in this business, and sometimes that can hurt. But until you can be honest with yourself and say, like, you know what, do I really love playing guitar in the rock band, or am I just in love with the idea of it? I was like Happy Gilmore. No one could tell me not to give up my dream of being the next Iggy Pop or the next Dave Grohl. Because I had this opportunity to work as a broadcaster, and I was still fascinated with this kind of this pipe dream of being a rock star. And it wasn't until I really took that look in the mirror and decided, no, I love being a broadcaster. I love making conversation and creating on-air bits. That's what I love to do. And I took a step back, and then I devoted my life to it. And since then, that's when things started to click.
And then you mentioned a little bit earlier about the harshness of the business, or kind of you have to be thick-skinned for this business.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to someone, tips to kind of, keep your head up above water when things are kind of a little bit shaky, or just when you're trying to enter it, or you're doing something and you're being criticized, or getting a little bit of harshness from it? How do you deal with those type of things?
Just understand, and again, I wish I could say something a little bit more profound, but it's the bottom line, and I know you probably hear it over and over again, but the fact is it's true. Like, everyone sucks when they start.
Yeah.
No one. There are geniuses. I mean, there's the Jimi Hendrix of the world and people like that, and Bach, that just come out of the womb, this magical, this artist, the people that are masters of their craft. But that's 1 in a million. And no matter if it's Michael Jordan or Van Halen, everybody sucks.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to take steps before you can learn how to sprint. And that's the way it goes, and it's just a unavoidable part of the business, starting out and not being awesome at what you want to do, but you work on it.
Yeah.
You work on it, and you can't be afraid to work on it, and you can't be afraid to earn your stripes. That's another thing.
And then it's we had Maria Menounos on the show a couple weeks back, and she was mentioning even starting off for herself. She was working at these big outlets and like Extra and or actually at the time I think Entertainment Tonight, and she mentioned that it was hard for her to go back and look at some of her tapes too, because she realized that she thought she was good, but what she as she's advanced now, it's easier to look back now and say, oh wow, I was still learning, and
Yeah.
there's still a lot that I needed to kind of improve. So,
That's exactly like Maria hit it right on the nose. I mean, and look at what she's built out of her ability to do something so well.
That's very true.
And she said, she's being open about the fact that she wasn't necessarily happy with her performance in the beginning, but she was honest with herself. And it gets back to my original point. It's like you gotta be able to listen. People might be giving you criticism that's undeserved. People might be giving you very constructive criticism, but it doesn't matter if you don't believe it.
That's true.
Everybody's seen the person on American Idol who's terrible at singing, and Simon or whoever say, I'm sorry, this isn't for you, and they're like, don't worry, I'll be back. I know I'm awesome. That person's not being honest with themselves. That's a person. You can value that level of confidence, and I do in a weird way. But at the same time, there's also difference between confidence and being delusion. Being so thickly delusioned that you can't even get a hold of things. And if you go back and you watch some tape or you listen to tape and you're like, yeah, that's not very funny. I'm struggling and I'm stammering. Until you can absorb that authentically, really take it honestly in and look in the man in the mirror and say, this is what I need to work on. You can't grow from those mistakes.
That's true. Yeah.
I realized that was, I definitely took my bumps and bruises from Kevin and Bean and Ralph and those guys, but they always gave me the ability to then look at, well, where can I improve? And it's such a hackneyed thing to do, to make analogies to fighting, but it's a very, there's a lot of clarity in the two when you put them into comparison. It's like, the guy who knows he has a great jab and good footwork, who only then works on jabs and footwork, is not a fighter who's going to take himself very far. If he knows he has troubles with keeping his right hand up and his uppercut and doesn't just hammer those home, those are the guys that make it. The ones who understand their flaws and their weaknesses, and that's what they work on the most.
And it's always like self-improvement,
Yeah.
Taking that and just growing with it too.
Yeah.
Now you've added actor to your resume as well. And now how do you go about picking your projects? And was it easy for you, since you were an established radio personality, to get acting roles? I know that you've done several things, and has that been an easy path for you, or did you have to hit the grind like everyone else and take acting lessons?
No. My wife's like a real actress, and I would never in any way try to insult real working actors and actresses by saying that, oh yes, I did it just the same. No, I've been lucky enough to be a radio personality based in Los Angeles. I come in contact with a lot of comics and a lot of actors who have their own shows or work on shows. And in a pinch, they'll be like, hey, it'd be funny if we got that, Psycho Mike to come in and do, and that's how it always ends up happening. So I'd love to say like, oh yes, I sit back with many scripts that are sent over my way, but that's, like guys like Jim Jeffries or the Workaholics guys, I know them from Loveline, and they just happen to throw me a bone every once in a while. I definitely like it. I enjoy it, and I certainly wouldn't, put it down. But I just don't want to in any way, like I said, insult the idea of real working actors by saying like I'm somehow like them. I've watched my wife and her and her peers go through things like pilot season.
Yeah.
And it's a massacre.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have nothing like going on like that. Nor do I have like any like major roles to talk about. I'm always like a bit guy who shows up. Or half the time I'm playing myself. Like a lot of times I'll be on a show where they go on Loveline. So I can't really say that I'm much of a thespian,
Would you like to do more of it?
Sure, I'd love to, especially comic acting. I mean, anything like the more far-fetched, the better. I love my idols growing up, when I talk about being creative, were guys like the Smothers Brothers and Trey and Matt from South Park, and Johnny Knoxville and everybody over in the Dick House world, and the Jackass guys. I love people who take something. I love people who take things that are really dumb very seriously. Yeah. I love when people put a lot of effort and focus and creativity and thought into things that really are just kind of stupid. The silly cartoons and stunts and stuff like that. I love it.
And then you were talking about this even with acting. We're in LA, and obviously people come here fresh off the boat and they want to get into the business. There's a bunch of schools and just management and things that people have the opportunity to have access to. But if you come into this industry fresh, do you think that it's important to always continue to educate yourself as far as like classes or I'm not sure what you can do with radio, like how you take radio classes, but maybe you can kind of fill us in on maybe some technique or some type of area that a new person can start getting themselves fresh in the industry?
If you honestly you want to become an actor, and this is great advice, not from I only know this because of my wife and my exposure to her. This goes for actors and actresses and models as well. If you're from Kansas or wherever you are and you get off a bus in Hollywood with this dream of making it because you're talented and pretty, don't ever let anybody convince you that you should be giving them money.
That's
a great agent and a manager, and they only get paid when you get a job. So don't let anybody scheme you into telling you, well, for $500 I can get you into these auditions, or for $5,000 I can get you headshots. No, that's not the way it works. Don't ever let anybody scam you into doing stuff for you. That's just one little piece of advice, because I know it's so easy to be exploited, especially when you have no idea what's going on in the business. That's true. I certainly am an outsider in most aspects of the business. I'm not really like in it, but I do see it. For if you're not a model because some guy's gonna, if you pay him $500, he'll put your photos on Facebook. Something like models are represented by an agency, and an agency like Wilhelmina and Ford Models, they don't get money until you get a photo shoot. So
that's true.
That's a little caveat for people out there who have really no idea what's going on. But for radio, if you want to get in radio, honestly, contact like the radio personality that you really like listening to, and just see if there's any chance that there's internships available. If there's any way you can just like send them your tape, even that, just practice. Like, because everyone knows the guy who's super funny and a great conversationalist, but trust me, when you get in front of a mic and that light goes on,
it's a different beast.
It's a whole different thing. And I've known plenty of people who, like program directors at KRock, or people, this guy would be a great co-host. This guy would be a great addition as a sports guy or whatever. And he's a killer comic, or she's a insanely good news broadcaster. But as soon as they get in front of the mic and go live, it's like a whole different person.
Personality leaves, yeah.
And so just practice being able to. They always say in like MMA and grappling sports, they say you got to learn to embrace discomfort. And I think the same thing goes for doing any type of acting or broadcasting. You got to learn to not only be composed when the tension's high, you have to learn to love it. You have to learn to love when the mic goes on, as opposed to kind of freak out. You have to learn to aspire for that camera to be on, as opposed to like counting the moments and breathing deeply before we go live.
Where it's like the red light's on.
Yeah.
You've done so many things in your career. What would you like to do next that you haven't accomplished yet?
I honestly, my dream would be to be a television talk show host, someone of a variety sort. The traditional kind of, monologues, guests, talk to people. I want to be on TV talking to people. That would be the next thing, the next big transition for me. I've already checked off one of my major bucket lists, and I'm starting to work in developing shows, writing for shows. Anything that I can do where I can put my enthusiasm and energy into being creative. That's all I've ever wanted to do, whether it be in TV or music since I was a little kid. So I'm getting that, having friends that I can pitch shows to. And even if they don't go to air, if no one ever knows about them, just knowing that I got someone who's a professional in the business to help me try and develop a show, because they're like, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
That character is funny. And then I can go home and scribble out ideas and scenes and stuff. It was a dream come true for me. And I'm already living a dream, being able to host Loveline and having been able to work for Kevin and Bean. But the next transition for me, if I could have it my way, would be to get into TV in a way that I can really interview people and talk to people and make it interesting for an audience,
Well, you obviously love what you do, because you're one of the best at it and people love you.
Thanks, man.
If you could use one word to define your career, what would you say?
Unnatural.
I like that.
Yeah. Unnatural. I mean, and this is said as a compliment to guys like that, not as any way of bitterness or jealousy. But guys like Ryan Seacrest, he's been open. He's like, when I was 6 years old, I want to be Casey Kasem. I was going to be the next Casey Kasem. And much to his credit, he followed every step he needed to do, and he worked his ass off to get. He's the modern day Casey Kasem.
He is.
He's a television producer who's a great radio personality, and he does top 40 countdowns, and he's your top 40 guy that also is a mogul in television and radio.
He's like Casey Kasem meets Dick Clark.
Right,
transition.
right. And he always was those guys that he looked at. And I was never that way. I kind of like banged around my whole life and just kind of rolled with the punches and saw where I could end up. And I took a very windy road to get to where I'm at. So I I would say that would be the best word to describe it. And that's not a good or bad thing. It's just, it just seems how it's end up. It's been an unorthodox kind of path to get to where I'm at.
Well, I think if when people are listening to this, and if they want even just to have half of your career and take some of your steps, you gave some very useful information.
Well, thank you, man. And I believe me, I'm so grateful to be able to like believe that. I know that there's a ton of people out there who like they listen to the radio and they're like, man, I'd cut my leg off to be able to host Loveline, or to do even scratch the surface of like just hanging out with Kevin and being in studio and getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And I'm very cognizant of that. I a lot of times it's easy to get negative about where things are going. You didn't get one job, or you didn't get this, or your boss would be mean to you. But I get quickly reminded so much that I'm just so lucky. I mean, I have such an awesome life, and I get paid to have such a great job. And so I believe me, I'm so like passionate about the idea of like maybe sharing that with someone, because it is a reality. It's so easy to believe. Like you see someone on TV, or you listen to the radio, or you see a band, and you're like, I can't do that. I'd love to do that, but that's not me.
Yeah.
That's the other people in that other different world. And I was that person. I was that kid. In my wildest dreams when I was 19, I could have got like a good union construction job. If I got like a good, solid, stable construction gig, that would have been the best possible thing for me. I never dreamed I could actually have like a life where I was creative for a living. But you can't. I mean, it's a reality. You just can't. You've got to believe in yourself, and then just go for it. Like that transition, the resistance that's inside you that says like, well, I can't just send a tape into someone, or I can't go to a broadcasting school and learn how to edit software, use editing software. I mean, there's just no point. No, you can. I mean, you really, really can. And I'm not saying that everyone's going to end up being Rush Limbaugh or Maria Menounos. Yeah. Certainly not. But it is a reality that you can have a job like that. You just have to fight those demons inside you that are telling you no, because everyone has those.
Everybody has those.
That resistance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. These were really helpful tips, and you're a true inspiration. So,
thanks, man.
Where can people find you on social media?
At Mike Catherwood on Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook / Mike Catherwood. Yeah, it's all Mike Catherwood. So.
You're watching Breaking Into. I'm Dario Kristen. We have the great Mike Catherwood with us today, who gave some very insightful tips on how to enter radio as well as TV hosting. Make sure you utilize those, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.